Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Kulbhushan Chandel from Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. Today we are going to talk on module Planning for Change from paper Organizational Change and Development. Let me know that what we are going to learn from this module. We will assess about the present situation. We will study the development of the change plan for the organization. We will also be studying the development of the action plan for change. We will be understanding the changes to be made in the organization. We will deal with the human factors also. We will be studying the changing employee behavior, and finally we will be dealing with their conflicts also. After setting the stage for the change, the alliance team, which is also known as coalition team, moves to next step, which is making plans for the change. During these changes, the change leaders must use their current level of knowledge about their organizations and also about the external environment. The change leaders also plan for the future according to their intuition also. In planning for the change, firstly, the change agent has to assess the present situation. Then a development plan for change is made, in which the activity plan is developed and the changes to be made are decided. After that, proper dealing with the human factor is done, which includes the detailed study of the changing employee behavior and dealing with their conflict also. The detailed explanations of these are explained in this module. Assessing the present situation. The first step in achieving the vision and outcomes is to assess the present situation of the organization. The alliance team firstly must develop the understanding of the organization as a whole and also to identify the organizational obstacles and strengths for change. As discussed in the previous module, for effective working of the organization, the members must work effectively with the individual parts. Organization members need to become familiar with the system-wide influences by identifying the patterns which affect the behavior of the individual parts. There are numerous strategies which can be used in making organizational change. The adoption of these strategies depends upon the size and scope of the change efforts. One approach is to use the coalition team in preparing the assessment of the organization as it relates to change. Due to the reason that members represent the various constituent groups and understand the daily functioning of the organization, it is easy to adopt this strategy. Another strategy is that the coalition team should conduct focus groups with the organizational members so as to obtain the broader perspective of the organization and to use a questionnaire for the same purpose. This strategy helps in the involvement of the organizational members in the change management, and it provides coalition team to communicate with the organizational members with regard to change too. The next strategy is to use outside consultants in conducting the organizational diagnosis with the aim of getting the objective, balanced perspective and the readiness of the organization for change. The last strategy is used by the large organizations in which the coalition team develops its own insights and perspectives. Out of the above mentioned approaches and strategies, any one strategy can be used by the organizations according to the ability of the organizations in instituting the planned change, there are some features which need to be considered. Some of them are organizational culture and values, attitude of members, organizational policies, managerial practices, technology, organizational structure, organizational systems, skill level of members. Developing a plan for change. After studying the present situation, the next step comes is to develop a plan for change. The change managers has to decide whether the change required is necessary or not, whether it is developmental change or transformative change. In all change processes, there needs to be an urgency to change. A coalition is necessary to move forward with the change, and the change must be clarified. Furthermore, for the change process to be a holistic one, there is a need for the organizational members to have at least fundamental understanding of the overall system, including the strengths and weaknesses. The planning process is affected by numerous factors, including project complexity, project size, level of uncertainty, and organizational requirements. It's the nature of the plan that it is uncertain as it deals with the future, and wherever the forecasting is involved, there is element of uncertainty there. The best plans are approximations of what is hold in the future. Generally, it is stated that more the complexity of project, more will be the specification requirement of the steps and their sequencing. The planning process is also very important in case when there is requirement and necessity of the timings. Extensive planning is also needed for a great deal of coordination. When huge projects span a considerable amount of time, it is easy to lose track of what needs to be done and when the work is to be done. Under these circumstances, the detailed schedule is prepared with the accountability identified. For example, if computerization is to be done in the organization, then there is requirement of the detailed project plan. Developing an activity plan. Once the coalition or alliance team has identified the detailed process of planning of the project, the next step is to develop the plan for managing the transition from the present situation to the future state. As stated by the Baker and Harris in 1987, the two main tasks during this time period are to determine the tasks and activities needed during this transition and to develop the structure and mechanism necessary for accomplishment of those tasks. In a sense, the coalition team must address the following issues: what need to be changed, where should the change occur, who will manage the change. There will be conflict when the organizational members resist change. There will arise situations when there will be a conflict among the organizational members or coalition team. Under these circumstances, the tendency to avoid change is inappropriate. Under these circumstances, the tendency to avoid change is inappropriate. A change is always accomplished by conflict. As suggested by Wheatley in 1999, that the systems should consider both benefits and discomfort of the conflict before adopting it. The coalition team needs to take an educative role, and when conflict arises, inform the organizational members about the development steps in change process. It is helpful to discuss the emotional responses that often accompanied by the perceived positive change. What changes are to be made? An activity and project plan must be produced that identifies the critical steps during the transition period. The project plan is a roadmap that tells how to get the present to future. The project plan is the plan which the coalition team thinks to achieve. When the coalition team members develop an activity plan, then they first take a big picture view and list all the major phases that must be addressed. Then they attach detail by adding all the tasks that will be included under each phase. Depending upon the complexity of the project, they may go back and add detail to the tasks. This process is known as work breakdown structure, and it becomes the base of the project schedule. It is often placed in a chart and a tool that allows the organization members to see when the various tasks begin and end. The work breakdown structure can be organized by time and outcome also. Where should the change occur? Once the coalition team decides the steps needed to be taken, then the team members concentrate on the initial attention. On the basis of the nature of the change project, the following subsystems are appropriate placed to start with. Senior staff. For some projects, the staff at the top layer of organization need to understand and model the change project for making it successful one. Then change ready departments. For having an organization which does not resist to change, it is necessary to have a unit of members who are excited and ready to make change. Dysfunctional departments. In some situations, it is best to intervene with the units that are experiencing the greatest discomfort and need for change. New teams or new departments. Teams without past history are often the most open to departing from old ways of operating and thus becomes an ideal place to intervene in an organization. Then it comes individual staff members. It might be fitting to intervene with a group of individuals who will later assist in implementing the changes. Temporary project teams. In an increasing number of change efforts, ad hoc teams are created which will exist until the change has been fully implemented. Depending upon the nature of the change, any of the above mentioned alternatives can be adopted for the intervention. The coalition team must make the determination based on all the information they have available to them. In some cases, the decision regarding the change will be introduced before team assembles. Who will manage the change? Although the coalition team has a very critical role in establishing the vision and setting of the direction for the change efforts, the team may not be involved in managing the change. A good rule of thumb is effective in bringing the transition in the organization that creates the least tension with the existing organization and the most opportunity to facilitate the change. Regardless of the coalition team, the one or more individuals have the authority and access to resources necessary to implement the change. The respect of the various stakeholders, including the coalition team, and skill to manage the change. There are various options available for managing the transition. Director of an agency. When the change effort is both intense and complex, altering the culture and nature of the agency, the logical transition manager is the director of the agency. Then the project manager. The director may temporarily assign the power to manage the change to staff member. In this instance, the project manager's power and authority stems from director's position rather than the staff member's own positions. Existing structure. Changes which are low in complexity and intensity can be managed through the normal management process using the standard system of accountability. Coalition team. Sometimes the coalition team chooses to manage the change and to guide the efforts. Predefined roles and responsibilities along with accountability must be established to make this alternative perform well. Another team. Depending upon the nature of the change itself, it may be advantageous to have a team other than the coalition team to manage the transition. Dealing with human factors. Most change efforts are not competing the failure and success. They often encounter problems such as taking too much time, cost more than anticipated, and many more problems. Change agents have to run into some form of human resistance, and also an important part of their role is to anticipate and reduce resistance before it occurs. Cotter and Skullsinger in 1992 have identified the following four forms of resistance and the manner of dealing with them. Narrow self-interest. The members of the organization think that they will have to lose something of value as a result of change, and they put their own interest over the best interest of the organization. This way of thinking proves as a hurdle in bringing the change in the organization. Misunderstanding and lack of trust. The members of the organization do not understand the rationale for the change and think the changes will lose more than it will gain for the organization. Considering that many organizations have relationship between managers and employees, employees often view change efforts with distrust and suspicion. Low tolerance for change. Organization members often resist change because they fear that they will be unable to adopt the change, and even sometimes they feel that they will not have the skills and knowledge to adapt to the changed new organization. Different assessments of the situation. Employees assess the situation differently from the changed agent. They see more cost to the change than benefits, not only themselves but for the organization as a whole. Furthermore, they do not distinguish any incentive or reward for the organizational members to change. Cotter and Skullsinger provided following strategies for handling the resistance from employees. Education and communication. It is helpful to educate organizational members before so that they can visualize change and the need for change. This reinforces what we have seen in learning about the needs to create dissatisfaction with the status quo and to force urgency to change. Participation and involvement. Participation can minimize the resistance if the organizational members are involved in planning and implementation. Then facilitation and support. When there is a great deal of fear and anxiety about the change agents need to be supportive of the organizational members. This approach is needed when the education, communication, and involvement do not ease the fear of the employees. Negotiation and agreement. It is helpful to offer incentives to resistors. This is especially appropriate in case of individuals or group who are losing something in the process. Changing employees' behavior. Although the leaders in the organization have conceptual knowledge about the change, but they are not skilled in implementing change. They are often not skilled in implementing change so that the employees make real change in behavior, skill, and attitude. For various reasons, the leaders believe that if they announce a change at meeting, distribute memo, or send an email, then employees' behavior will change. Regularly, the change team fall into small traps of organizational members and leaders. This team in this situation should plan how the leaders should interact with each other and set up systems for communication and conduct a highly successful training session with the staff. The organizational members and the coalition team should interact on the following matters. What action will be taken to deal with two-way communication before and after the change? What steps will be taken to involve the members in change efforts? What will be done to address the emotional responses of the organizational members? What new skills and knowledge will be required to make change? What incentives will be created for the organizational members to change? By careful examination and responding to each of the above mentioned questions, much of the resistance can be resolved. This will also make the organizational members to adapt to change rather than fighting on it. Let's summarize what we have learned in this module. During this phase, the scope and complexity of the change dedicated how the detailed assessment and planning process can be done. In all types of changes, it is important to identify the short-term wins to reinforce the change process and to deal with human factors. All the changes will bring new knowledge, skills, and attitudes. After setting the stage for the change, the coalition team moves to next step, which is making plans for the change. During these changes, the change leaders must use their current level of knowledge about their organizations and also about the external environment. The change leaders also plan for the future according to their intuitions also. In planning for the change, firstly, change agent has to assess the present situation. Then a development plan for change is made in which the activity plan is developed and the changes to be made are decided. After that, proper dealing with human factors are done, which includes the detailed study of the changing employee behavior and dealing with their conflicts. Also, there are numerous strategies which can be used in making organizational change. The adoption of these strategies depends upon the size and scope of the change efforts. One approach is to use coalition team in preparing the assessment of the organization as it relates to change, due to the reason that members represent the various constituents groups and understand the daily functioning of the organization. It is easy to adopt this strategy. Another strategy is that the coalition team should conduct focus groups with the organizational members so as to obtain the broader perspective of the organization and to use a questionnaire for the same purpose. This strategy helps in the involvement of the organizational members in the change management, and it provides coalition team to communicate with the organizational members with regard to change also. The next strategy is to use outside consultant in conducting the organizational diagnosis with the aim of getting the objective, balanced perspectives and the readiness of the organization for change. The last strategy is used by the large organizations in which the coalition team develops its own insight and perspectives. Although the leaders in the organization have conceptual knowledge about the change, but they are not skilled in implementing change. They are often not skilled in implementing change so that the employees make real changes in behavior, skills, and attitude. For various reasons, the leaders believe that if they announce a change at meeting, distribute memo, and send an email, then employees' behavior will change. Regularly, the change teams fall into small traps of organizational members and leaders. This team in this situation should plan how the leaders should interact with each other and set up system for communication and conduct a highly successful training session with the staff. Thank you.